Hi, I'm Randy McLean of Waypoint Analytics. This is Jeannie Hurlburt from Hurlburt Consulting. Jeannie and our company, Jeannie's firm and our firm, have been working together in a number of client accounts across the years. And Jeannie, you've been spending a great deal of time recently working on one of the vital elements that we think is important for profit and competitive advantage, and that's the concierge level customer service. And that's really important because the changing the shift, or shifting the balance, changing the balance of huge money-making customers to profit-drain customers is vital, and it's one of the things that companies do to improve their bottom line within the customer base they already have. So adding competitive advantage on customer service and on pricing on the top most profitable accounts is a way to make sure that you retain them at the same time that you bring more of them in. And that allows you to trade off some of the customers that right now provide cash flow but drain your profits. And so as you've been working on customer service, part of our conversation this morning was you're discovering that companies really have a big task to move out of the old style of communication to modern communication. And what I mean by that is that if you go back 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, 50 years, the main vehicle for communications from a distributor to the customers was through the salesperson. And that's not happening so much anymore. In the age of Google and social media, companies are providing information in a different way that's better suited for the customer. And that's one of the reasons why salespeople are having such a hard time getting in the door. They are not the primary information source for the market anymore. So we've always known that companies are going to have to make the jump to hyperspeed, and they're going to have to add these capabilities if they want to maintain their market position. So what are you seeing out in the marketplace?
Well, what we're seeing is that they know they need to do it, but they're not there yet. So they have several things they need to do. You mentioned social media, and you mentioned just simple email communication. And so let's just take that up a level and talk about what that's really about. It's really about building and maintaining a relationship with your customer. Okay.
Yes.
So when we talk about customer service, you can't serve people well if you don't have a relationship with them. Customer service isn't just about putting out fires when something goes wrong. We need to think about it more broadly as deepening that relationship with the customer and taking the opportunity to have the company do that rather than just having the salesperson do that, because it makes you much less vulnerable, for one thing.
Well, that's a really good point, because if you're worried about the salesperson owning the relationship, and then they get an offer from another company, you don't want them taking the customers with them, because they own the relationship. You want the company to own the relationship. So having more parallel connections to the customer is a great bulwark against that kind of a problem. And that's something I think every company should be doing. Now, the interesting thing, though, or one of the elements that I'm thinking of as we're having this discussion is, I think that we kind of all know that we want to have more of a relationship, but I'm not entirely sure that that's specific enough to know how to have the relationship. So how is it that companies are building those relationships now in a more modern and electronic environment?
Well, I think there are two key mechanisms. One is social media, and the other is email. Right?
Yes.
So you need to be having a conversation with your clients, and you need to think about it that way. And you need to think about the channels as just ways to have that conversation with them. And you have a conversation by meeting them where they are. So one of the things we do for our companies is help them find out where are their folks on social media, because most of them don't know. Well, in distribution companies, the vast majority are on Facebook and they're on LinkedIn. And so they're not, for the most part, not out on Google Plus and Twitter and Instagram. So that makes it relatively simple. We know there are two channels, so we can have a conversation with them there, and we can have a conversation through email marketing. Regularly we're sending out email communication with helpful content that is about them, not about our company, but it's about our customer, and it's about what they care about, and it's showing them how to get the things done they care about doing.
Well, that's interesting, because when I translate that back to the perspective that I would have in the industry. We've always felt that it was important to connect with the customer and help them do what they do. And at the base of it, we're very interested in making sure that they are doing well in the business, and we want them to know how to use our products and use our services and serve their customers in turn in a better way. So, we think of doing training with our customers. We think about sending out product information to our customers. And in the old days, that would be a supplement to the salesman coming out and teaching them about the latest feeds and speeds and so on, and whatever we're providing. But now we have a new generation that's coming in. They've grown up in the age where everything is online and you can get access to anything, anytime. And they're expecting to be able to find a video on something, or be able to find, read the latest blog where somebody has an opinion, or to be able to ask a question in Twitter and have 15 people give their opinion back, and then have an instant answer from the community, as it were. And in fact, the customers are doing this. They're doing this now. They're going, and when they have a question, they're looking online for an answer. They're going to their Twitter or their Facebook accounts looking for an answer. And they're going to YouTube looking for an answer, and they're going to their vendor sites looking for answers, and so that conversation is going on. And what's vital to our clients, I think, is to make sure they're part of the conversation.
Absolutely, because if you're absent from that conversation and your competitors are present, you're at a disadvantage automatically.
Exactly. Okay, so as we're having this conversation, I'm wondering what you're seeing when you're out in the accounts, when you're looking, you're doing your work with various distributors. What do you think their general state is in having the ability to participate in this conversation?
That's a great question. They don't reject the premise. They understand that they need to be having this conversation, but the vast majority with whom we're working really aren't sure how to do that yet.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's some technological impediments. They don't have the tools in place yet, or they're not sure how to put the tools in place. So sometimes there's simple stumbling blocks. They don't have a means of email communication. They don't know how to set up the template for the email, those kinds of things. More often and more fundamentally, what's stopping them is they're not sure what to talk about in that conversation with their customer.
Yeah.
And so the biggest reason that businesses don't create content or start that email conversation is because they don't know what to create. So one of the things that we do for them is to find out what the top concerns of their customers are. And well, if you know what the top 5 things they want to hear about are, now it becomes very simple. Well, gosh, I can take those 5 topics and I can map them across Facebook and YouTube and my email conversation, and now I know what to do, and I know I can send out content that they care about, that's relevant to them, because I know where their heads are. I know what their concerns are.
Well, for years, the trade press and other press have had editorial calendars, and you know that in March is going to be the time when we talk about, delivery methods or something like that. And they have a lot of articles they get together on delivery methods, and the vendors that help with delivery methods are in the magazine advertising and so on. Is that the kind of model that you're talking about?
That's the kind of model, but what's ironic is even big companies, when we worked with Fortune 500 companies, even big companies don't typically model those calendars around what their customers care about. They sit in a room and say, oh, well, let's talk about delivery, let's talk about this, let's talk about that. And they don't think about orienting that around what the customer really wants to hear. And when we're talking about email or social media or any of that, I like to compare it to the old cartoons about the dog. Yeah. And what the dog hears is wah, 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 Neely, the dog's name, wah, wah, wah. Your customers are the same way. Everything else is noise until you get to something they care about.
Right.
And so it doesn't seem revolutionary to orient the editorial calendar and the nature of the content around what customers care about, but in fact it is, because most businesses aren't doing it. That's where you have the opportunity for competitive advantage.
Yeah, and so I would take a different perspective on that. I would say that, there's this old question about, do you go and try and have the marvelous bait that will get the fish to bite, or do you go and fish where the fish are biting?
Right.
And I think there's a tremendous advantage in being more customer-centric. And we all talk about customer-centric, but customer-centric really means not doing what you want to do. It means doing what the customer wants.
That's right.
And those things are you're not actually being customer-centric if you're just sort of inventing the things that you want to talk about, pushing out, the topic du jour, the product of the month, that kind of thing. It's much more important to understand, what the customers need at the time. And that'll give you an advantage over the people that basically haven't got to the,
Absolutely.
to the advanced level of this kind of marketing.
Absolutely.
So that's an interesting insight. I think that my takeaway is that the world is changing. We can feel it. The reason it's changing is customers have better mechanisms for discussing and learning and getting discussions going or getting information on the things that matter to them. The best companies are part of that conversation because they've developed, they have a Twitter account, they have a blog, they're using these different vehicles to get to where the customers are discussing the topics that are important to them. And then the most advanced companies are finding out what the customers are actually interested in terms of what they feel their risks are, their opportunities are, what they're being told when they go to the associations and then come back with a hot button item. They're finding out what those are, and then they're tailoring the content that they're producing to meet those needs.
Absolutely.
So I guess that's great. There's kind of a blueprint to be an advanced company that that is positioned better than the competition.
And it's really very simple.
Yeah.
Find out what they want, map that across your channels, and there you go.
Yeah, and that's the answer to the problem where the salespeople aren't able to get in the door to communicate with the customer anymore. So I hope this is something that will be interesting to you, something that will be beneficial as you think about what you and your team do to address these kinds of issues. If there's some things in here that help set you on a new path to a greater success and being more important to your customers in terms of getting them what they want when they want it, then I think we've done a good job this morning. So thank you very much, Jeannie.
Thanks, Randy.
And thank you for your time. We'll look forward to seeing you in future videos.